what's crazy is a lot of people, we underestimate the amount of money we're talking about here in cybercrime. So let's start with that real quick, Ed. There's a Bloomberg article out there talking about this, and it says that essentially if you were to take cybercrime, global cybercrime, and make it into a GDP, a gross domestic profit, it would be number 3 in the world after the US and China. That's a staggering number. It's a crazy, crazy world out there. But again, the stakes are so high.
In the world of technology, heroes are everywhere. They're overcoming disruption, delivering sustainable outcomes, and fearlessly forging the future to solve what's next. Join me, Ed McNamara, as we meet the people and businesses driving change in our constantly disruptive world. This is Innovation Heroes, a podcast brought to you by SHI.
This episode is brought to you by KnowBe4. Ready to move beyond cybersecurity awareness to actually reducing human risk? Visit shi.com/partners/KnowBe4 to learn how AI is transforming human risk management.
Imagine wrapping up a routine video call with your CFO and some colleagues. Everything looked and sounded normal. Then you get a message, urgent request, wire transfer, high stakes. So you act, you move the money. Minutes pass, then hours. And then slowly the truth sets in. Every face on that call, every voice was fake, generated by AI. That's exactly what happened when a Hong Kong-based employee was tricked into sending $25 million to fraudsters after a deepfake Zoom call. Today on Innovation Heroes, we're joined by Erich Kron, security awareness advocate at KnowBe4, and one of the industry's leading voices on human risk and social engineering. We'll unpack what went wrong in that Zoom call, how cybercriminals are industrializing deception, and what you need to know to stay ahead this Cybersecurity Awareness Month. Erich, welcome to Innovation Heroes.
Hey, it's great to be here, Ed. Thanks for having me.
So usually we start off with a little bit of an icebreaker, and I think the story is the icebreaker on this one. Let's start with that $25 million deepfake heist. You know, what stood out to you about that case, and why do you think it's become such a watershed moment?
Yeah, to me, the most interesting part of that is the fact that we're at a point right now where, of course, deepfakes are growing, everything's happening, and one of the limitations we still have, though, is the ability to do live deepfakes that look really convincing, right? Where there's no glitching or anything like that. But what happened here is they got around that by simply scripting the entire call. And they created the deepfakes offline and basically ran this kind of like a movie, if you will. And the person who was brought into it, who ended up wiring the money, he was the only person that wasn't part of this deepfake charade here. And it was one of those meetings where you kind of sit in the back and you listen to the bigwigs talking, right? And then what they did is they went through and they had that whole part scripted. They had it done. They apparently pulled like some video and audio off the internet. I mean, we see that with executives. They do briefings, they do stuff. So it's out there. So they pulled all this information, did that, and then what they did is partway through, they cut off the call. And we've all been on those Zoom calls, right, where they get cut off. And what they did is the bad actors then reached out to this other person who hadn't been a part of the conversation because it was all scripted, but said, you know what, we're not going to start up that Zoom meeting again. You already heard us talk about it. Let's just take care of the money that we discussed, which I think is really, really clever because, again, we can all relate. We've all been there before and been on a meeting like that. It's gone down. You're like, man, we're not going to kick that off. We covered everything we needed to. So it really fits into what we expect or our past experiences with that. And then they just simply said, hey, let's get that money transferred out. And it's very convincing.
You know, I love that you said right off the bat, ran it like a movie, because when I was reading about this case, I'm like, this guy's in the Truman Show, right? He's the only one not in on it. It is a digitized Truman Show, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And you got to think about the skills that were involved in getting that all set up and doing the recordings. And honestly, getting the whole Zoom launched where everything's seamless and all the videos are running. I mean, if you've ever tried to run a video in Zoom, come on, we all know the challenges there. So the fact that they were able to put it all together was really impressive. But at the end of the day, you also have to look at what the payday was. That was $25 million that they got them to wire out. And if you think about it, it's worth a lot of effort to spring something like that and make it work.
And to me, it hits right at the heart of human nature, right? I mean, we are pack animals. It's like everybody else can't be in on it, right? I mean, going back to the Truman Show for a second, he's sitting on the bridge with his friend. He's like, well, if everybody's in on it, then I'd have to be in on it too, and that buys him more time. He's like, yeah, maybe I'm, it's perfectly fine, right? And it's like the fact that there are other humans who see nothing wrong with this is, I mean, to me, that's just the core of somebody authorizing this kind of money transfer, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And there's going to be a level of trust that's built in something like that, especially something novel like that, okay, where we haven't seen it really before. Like that was the first time it made mainstream sort of news, and because of the amount involved in the trickery, right? We've all seen the text message saying, hey, you owe us some tolls. Okay, come here to pay your tolls and all of that, right? We've all seen that, and we kind of roll our eyes at that now. But the very first time you saw that, if you hadn't been aware that that was a thing, you might have looked at it twice and been like, wow,
Yeah.
what's going on here? And that's the difference. This was so novel at the time. People were not aware of this at all. And so that made it even more convincing.
And the amount of research that had to be done, because you've got to find somebody that has the authorization to make that sort of transfer, right? So before the video was created, before the call was scripted, it's like, who are we going to go after? Who has that level? Because if there's other levels needed, like it's not going to happen, right? Like who is the person that we can can target with this,
Oh,
right?
yeah, there was absolutely research here. I mean, this is not one of those types of email campaigns that are just blasted out there, the commodity type
Right.
stuff. This was very focused and very well researched. I mean, you figure they had to go out and find these leaders and find the video for that, pull it off, and then generate the deep fakes of the audio and video from all that. I mean, there was a lot of work involved in this.
Right. So you've said that cybercrime today is a business, complete with HR departments and affiliate models. What does that look like in practice?
Yeah, what's crazy is a lot of people we underestimate the amount of money we're talking about here in cybercrime. So let's start with that real quick, Ed. There's a Bloomberg article out there talking about this, and it says that essentially, if you were to take cybercrime, global cybercrime, and make it into a GDP, a gross domestic profit, it would be number 3 in the world after the US and China. That's a staggering number. So when something like that comes up and we go, wow, that's a lot of money. Well, that's where we start talking about how much all of these gangs and groups are doing. And if you're going to do things at this level with that much money, you better believe it's got to be run a bit like a business. You can't just do this out of your mom's basement, with your pizza boxes around and Mountain Dew, like a lot of people figure hackers are, right? That come on, that's couldn't be farther from the truth. They have these setups now where essentially they do like an affiliate thing. And I always laugh about this, especially in ransomware. So you have these ransomware developers. The ransomware developers are in charge of the infrastructure and most of the time the payment infrastructure and taking Bitcoins or whatever it is they're going to take. They're responsible for the malware itself and like the encryption key exchange and all that tricky stuff you need to have going on there.
Mm-hmm.
It takes a lot to deal with that because they're trying to get around, our defenses all the time. So they're focused on that. Well, what that does is it allows them to focus on that while they have affiliates. These affiliates are actually the ones that go out and they're the ones that do the actual attacks. So you may have one ransomware group that has 5 or 10 or 20 or however many affiliate groups working with them. And what ends up happening is it's a profit sharing structure. And this is the part that always kind of makes me laugh a little bit, right? This is like the Mary Kay of cybercrime, if you will. You've got these folks that are out there, and the profit sharing generally runs along the lines of 70 to 30. So 70% split to the affiliates, 30% to the developers. I've seen it as high as 80% to the affiliates, 20% to the developers. But for both sides, it's a really good gig. Now,
Right.
the affiliates, they don't have to be that smart. Like, they don't have to be technically smart enough to develop the ransomware and do all that stuff. And the developers don't have to be bothered with, how do I get into these organizations? How do I get it planted? So it becomes very focused. Now, yeah, there's other cybercrime too. You talked about HR departments and stuff. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, these scam callers and things like that, they're going to work in some of these places just like everyone else does in their office building for what they're doing in their call centers, right? It's just a job in some places. And I don't know if we want to touch on this right now or not, but there actually is even a human trafficking element in some areas around this as well. So it's a crazy, crazy world out there. But again, the stakes are so high.
Producer Melanie here with a message from our sponsor. After hearing Erich break down that $25 million deepfake scam, the stats around human risk are absolutely staggering. Get this, 68% of security breaches include the human element. 36% of data breaches are caused by phishing activities. That deepfake Zoom call we just discussed, it's not an outlier anymore. It's becoming the new normal. Here's the thing, cybersecurity isn't just a tech problem, it's a human one. That's exactly why our partner KnowBe4 created HRM Plus, their AI-driven human risk management platform. It doesn't just measure human risk, it actually helps you reduce it across your organization. HRM Plus uses what they call agentic AI to analyze real-time user behavior. Things like phishing test failures, risky browsing patterns, even sentiment signals to automatically surface your highest risk users. No more guesswork. With AI-powered risk scoring, automated coaching, and smart reporting, HRM Plus helps you get ahead of data breaches, ransomware, and malware attacks before they happen. It's how you stay ahead of social engineering and phishing attacks, the #1 threat targeting organizations today. Ready to move from awareness to action? Check out shi.com/partners/KnowBe4 to learn more about how AI is transforming the way organizations manage human risk.
We're hearing a lot about deepfakes lately, audio, video, even Zoom impersonations, like the one we're talking about today. Like, how easy is it for attackers to generate these fake identities?
Yeah, well, it's easier than ever. And I'll say this, I've been playing around with the deepfake stuff for years, probably 6 years now, maybe even more. And back in the early days, you had the software and it would take a video, for example, and it would deconstruct it frame by frame, and then it would try to morph the face in there, and then it would put it all back together. I mean, it took hours to do something that lasts 10 seconds. And that was on a powerful computer. But where we're at these days, we have these online offerings that are cheap and easy. They'll do audio, they'll do video, they'll do pretty much anything you want at an extremely low cost. And the quality is, quite frankly, amazing. If you see the videos that come out from like Google's VO3, those are just, it's mind-boggling. And we've seen these used not only in cybercrime, but also in the misinformation, disinformation stuff. When they had the LA protests and the Air India crash, there were videos being generated all the time right around there that were completely fake, but very realistic looking and being, out there peddled as real things. This stuff is all around us, probably more than we realize. And it's extremely realistic. I mean, it's getting to the point that it's pretty scary. And again, the cost is relatively cheap.
I'm thinking to myself, insider help. How much easier is it if you get somebody on the inside to provide some of this information, and how often does it turn out that happens?
Yeah, it's a lot easier if you have some of that inside information, because you know certain things. If I know a computer or if I know a company runs nothing but Chromebooks, I'm probably not going to try to put out malware that's for a Windows machine or a Mac or something, right? There's things like that that make it a whole lot easier. If I know what your antivirus is, I can work against that and get it fixed. Now, the thing is, there's intentional insiders and there's accidental insider information that comes out, and we don't always think about that. But one of the things that's actually really valuable is vishing, the voice phishing stuff. People
Mhm.
will call up organizations and they'll start asking random people questions and trying to get them to give up that information. Hey, what antivirus do you run? What do this is the IT department. We need to do this. They may not always be trying to get them to do an action right then and there, but they're gathering information. And the more information you have within the organization on how things function, how policies are, how all of that stuff works, the more value it's going to bring you when you actually go to trigger this attack. So if you can imagine, I'm trying to trigger an attack, I'm going in and I'm trying to get somebody to do something. And I say, hey, you know what? I know this isn't with our, explicit name policy, but I need you to bypass it right now. So and so
Mhm.
said this, and you can say all those things. The person is much more likely to be convinced that, okay, cool, this is somebody who knows their way around and is probably legitimate, because most people wouldn't have this information.
Right. And I'm thinking back to, I don't know if you remember, we all took that pop psychology 101 class, back in college, where it was, the white lab coats, and like somebody is hooked up to an electrode like on the other side, and like this authoritarian figure was saying, well, if they answer this question wrong, you've got to zap them. It's like, and people did, and it's let's talk about the psychology of like, following the social order. I mean, you've talked about the psychology of social engineering, and how they attackers exploit our mental shortcuts. Can you walk us through the, system one versus system two thinking model, and how much of it is people like, I really think I'm doing what I'm supposed to be doing right now?
Yeah, well, first of all, Ed, I want to say that I always wanted to be the one in the trench coat doing the shocking. Okay, I mean,
You don't want to be the one with the
yeah,
electrode hooked
no,
up to
no,
you,
that
no.
doesn't sound like
Yeah.
fun to me. But the other side around, I don't know. There's an argument that could be a lot of fun. Um,
Right.
so when you get into some of the psychology, this is stuff that I get really excited about, because I think it's fascinating how this works and how it's worked for, honestly, decades, maybe even longer, because we are essentially wired a certain way. And so con artists and scammers have been exploiting this in different ways using different technology for many, many years. Okay.
Hmm.
But what I really love to look at is kind of the system one, system two thinking, as you mentioned, from Daniel Kahneman.
Hmm.
And the idea is system one thinking is very much our kind of like cruise control. Okay. We spend most of our time in system one thinking, and that's just doing repetitive tasks. It also handles things like breathing, right? You don't sit there and
Hmm.
think, breathe in, breathe out until I mention it. So
Right.
it's all of those sorts of things, but it also handles where we go in that fight or flight response. Now, system two thinking is much more critical thinking. So that's where we're going to do math. That's where we're going to add things up. That's where we're going to do figuring and all of that stuff that takes brain power. And one of the things that system one thinking is good about is conserving energy. Our brains actually, they burn a lot of calories every day. So
Hmm.
we want to be in a state where we're not burning a bunch of energy. That's our natural physiology there. Like, have you ever driven a long drive, for example, and
Hmm.
you get to the destination and you're like, I really don't remember, like, 10 minutes of this drive. You were operating the car, you were, unless you live in Florida, you might have been using your turn signal. I mean, this is, it's the stuff you do with when you're automatically doing it. Now,
Right.
what happens is these bad actors, they use emotions to drive us into system one thinking. And system one thinking is where we make the mistakes because it's not critical thinking. So that's where you get these attacks that have this really strong sense of something is going to go wrong if you don't do this thing right now.
Right.
where you have this rush to do things. It drives us into system one thinking and we react. And a lot of times that's not the good idea. Think about times you were under a whole lot of stress. Is that a good time to decide to go buy a new car or a new house? No.
No.
Right. And so that's what happens is they drive us into system one thinking, and that keeps us from doing the critical thinking, from looking at it and going, why would the CEO send me an email on Saturday saying they need me to go buy a bunch of gift cards, right? Doesn't make sense that way. And that's why I tell people, especially security people or technical people, look, if you have a person that's made a mistake and they've clicked on something and they tell you about it, try not to beat them up. To us, it looks so obvious. Like, how did you not spot this, right? We talk about elderly people going, how do you not see that this is not the IRS reaching out to you? Well, it's a whole different world when the pressure's on you. And that is a key thing there. Those emotions make us mess up.
My dad is 86 and he's from, born in 39. He's from that generation. And he called me up and said, yeah, I get this notice from the bank. And long story short, I said, Dad, wait, which bank? And it turned out he didn't have an account at that bank. So I'm like, Dad, like, let's take a step here. And the poor guy was just like, I can't believe I'm even calling you about this, right? I'm like, yeah, it's okay. Like, this is their job. This is what they do.
Yep. And that's taking that step back though, afterwards, looking at it critically and going, oh, you know what? Because you talked to him and said, no, this isn't really a thing. And that allowed him to psychologically step back, apply that critical thinking and go, wait a minute. And so now he can spot it.
Right. I saw an episode, I think it was CBS Sunday Morning last year, where there was a report on how schools in Finland are teaching media literacy to very, very young students and helping them identify AI-generated hoaxes and other misinformation. Like, I suspect I know what your answer is, but God, shouldn't we be rushing this into the curriculum right now? I mean, shouldn't this be happening at the kindergarten level,
Well, here's the problem with the education system. I love education, but it tends to work very slowly. So changes come about slowly. If you look at people that go to college, if you went into computer sciences, how far behind was the stuff you were messing with in most schools by the time you got out? And just in general, it's slow moving. The same thing is said in government with regulatory things and all that. I think it's a great idea. I really do think it's wonderful. It'd be nice if we can roll that into the curriculum. The problem is, by the time we go, these are the things you look at in a video to see if it's AI or not. That's already been fixed by the AI generators, and that's maybe no longer valid or could be a false flag. So I think it's, as nice as that would be, I don't know if it's going to be practical to teach like specifics like that. But I will say this. I think education is really, really good if we can start saying, okay, let's not worry about the technology involved. Let's talk about the concept of the scam itself. Okay. If I understand that there's a scam out there that gets me to go buy Apple gift cards and, give them the numbers to somebody, it's not going to matter if somebody hits me up looking for Amazon gift cards. I'm going to go, wait a minute, there's a scam about gift cards, right? So the details aren't going to matter. And that goes higher and higher up, where if people are aware that there is a gift card scam, it doesn't matter if they ask you for whatever. If they really understand that and remember that, that's going to make them safe. So I think if we get into the larger scale, not the specifics, but look, AI is being used to sometimes present a false story, then that's something that they're maybe going to look at, and we present better critical thinking skills like confirm it in one or two other locations or through other searches or other outlets. I think that would actually be the better way to do that.
So let's talk about some of the defenses. What are some of the AI powered tools or processes helping organizations fight back against these kinds of threats?
Yeah, it's interesting. I was at Black Hat this year, which is like the big convention there in August in Vegas. And I walked around and I said, I'm going to take a picture of everywhere one of these booths says AI. And I made it about three aisles, and I'm like, I'm gonna have to wipe all the memory off my phone if I'm gonna continue to do this. Like that, everything says it's AI defense, AI defense.
Hmm.
Um, there is a lot of that out there. Some of it's even pretty good. Some of the stuff that I like to see, like one of the things I love about what we're doing with AI is looking at like email filters and things like that, right? So, kind of to my last point, even we can look now using AI, you can look at certain things and contextually see, is this email asking someone to take an action?
Mm.
So we're not cluing in on keywords or phrases like gift card. We're saying, is this actually looking to get them to take an action? These kinds of tools I really, really like. If you're looking at computers and you're saying, hey, you know what? Bob over here doesn't encrypt files ever. All of a sudden, it's encrypting, 300 files a second. Maybe
Right.
we need to stop that process until a human can come in and go, no, that's not ransomware. Like those kind of applications I'm seeing either happening or being developed is the stuff that I'm really excited about seeing on the AI side. Now, with us too, when we tackle the human element, which I think is one of the tougher ones for especially technical people who get saddled with it, some of the stuff I like there is we've got some AI agent stuff going on that, it's looking at the people, their risk scores, the things that they've passed in the courses that they take, the things that they've struggled with, if they've clicked on emails about certain subjects. And it can actually look around and start assigning um, it can assign simulated attacks to people. We're working in areas where it can assign the training that, maybe that person's already pretty good at not falling for credential fishes, right? Why bother wasting our valuable training time continuing to tell them about don't enter credentials? They're like, yeah, I got that. I know that. You're better off applying it towards things that maybe they've had issues with before. So tools like that, approaches like that, especially on the agentic side, I'm really excited about seeing. And I'm seeing more and more of this being applied. I'm seeing more and more of it work. I love to see that kind of stuff happening. We're going to have to use AI to fight AI.
Mm.
There's just no two ways around it. It's a technology like a hammer. We've just got to use it wisely.
So you talked about the tools, but and then there's also policy.
Yeah.
What's if you had to advise one policy shift that companies should implement to reduce risk, what would it be?
Yeah, there's a lot of things that, I mean, it's a tough one because every company is a little bit different. Every organization is different and they're going to do things a little differently. So, a policy shift in one place in a financial organization is probably going to be a little bit different, maybe, than one in a medical organization. But I would say ultimately, in the grand scheme of things, um, one of the key things I want to see people do is really take some time and focus on the human element of cybersecurity.
Mm.
And I say that, yes, I work for KnowBe4, but I work for KnowBe4 because I'm so passionate about this. And I've seen it throughout my career back to the mid 1990s, where people are constantly the number one way that bad actors get into networks. And although organizations have been learning, they're getting better about it. I still see a lot of organizations out there that they apply the bare minimum to say make a compliance checkbox, right? So they're like, yeah, we do security awareness training, and they do it once a year. It's a long, boring thing where they throw donuts at people, and you know what I mean? Like it's just how effective is that really going to be? We need to put a little bit more effort into things and look at it not just like awareness, because I'll be blunt, awareness is not going to fix the problem. We need to stop with just the awareness part and we need to focus on changing behavior. Because if I make you aware of something and you don't change what you do about it, how much does that actually help? So we need to focus on that when we talk about like the human risk management side of things. And that's what I want to see more organizations do. So it's more than just phishing and simulated phishing emails. It's educating about credential reuse. That's a big problem out there, right? It's educating about all of those sorts of things. Multi-factor authentication, why you want to enable it, why you want to have it on all your social media accounts. I mean, this is important stuff that we can tell people and help people develop a more security-centric mindset. Because, I mean, let's be honest, it's not going away. This isn't like we're just trying to get through this rush of cybersecurity and in 6 months we won't have to worry about it anymore. It's here to stay, and it's probably one of the biggest threats in any organization at this point.
And I saw your resume, which everybody can go and check out. It's impressive on LinkedIn. But you worked with military personnel like earlier in your career, and you've been at KnowBe4 eight 9 years now, I believe. And like none of the technology that we were talking about at the beginning of this podcast, was in use back then, or at least not on a grand scale that it is now. So that human element, I just feel like, has followed you through different types of organizations, like very rigidly structured organizations, like military organizations, where to me, I'm like, wow, is it even easier there to do this? Because if you get the right person telling another right person, to do something, it's going to be done, right? So that human element is just huge, and you've seen it in every type of organization, right?
Yeah, and it's just fascinating to see how long this has been going on. When it comes to phishing, I do joke that I think maybe the second email that went out was probably a phishing email, right? And if you think about it, a lot of these things are built on previous types of scams. Okay, Nigerian print scam, we've all heard that one. So using that as an example, right? That goes back to pre-internet days, right? They used to have to lick stamps and put them on an envelope and print paper and mail them to people. Yeah. And people were falling for it back then too, right? So what happened? The digital world comes out, and now all of a sudden you can send 50,000 emails to people for, 40 or 50 bucks in a service. It costs almost nothing to do it. So that's evolved digitally. But even before they were doing it on paper with the Nigerian print scam, it was like the Spanish prisoner scam. Like these things have gone back for generations and generations. They've just evolved a little bit every time we've gotten new technology that allows them to make it a little bit more realistic. But I've actually even seen some interesting stuff happen where we've regressed. And I've seen stuff go out in the mailbox. For example, Southern California, there was a bunch of stuff went out to some folks that said you were parked on the street overnight during street cleaning night, and here's a $53 fine. Scan this QR code, which can be really hard to see where you're going with, and pay your fine. Well, what do? You go, okay, that stinks, but it was overnight. I was asleep. It's only $50. I'm not going to go fight everybody about this. So you follow that QR code, give them your credit card number, and where's it go after that? But that ended up going through the mail. So wow. It's a cyclical thing that we see going on here over and over again. But if you think about it, it's all exploiting the human side there.
So looking at the end of 2025 going into 2026, what trends in cybercrime worry you the most at this point?
We're going to see more. Volumes are up big time because you can use AI to generate this stuff. You can use AI to generate the back-end websites where you go to pay a parking, like your parking meter with a QR code that's on that, and it turns out it's a fake one, right? Those can be generated. They don't last very long. They tend to get taken down quickly. But if you have an AI that can just pop out there and generate those things over and over again instead of a person having to do it, the efficiencies are going through the roof. So we're seeing more. The volumes are higher on these attacks. We're also seeing, like in the phishing side, polymorphic phishing is way up. And what that means is basically every email that you're getting these days, or in smaller numbers, they're very different, or they're different enough that the filters don't necessarily pick them up on patterns. Okay. So there'll be slight differences to each email that makes it harder to be able to filter out. Even if somebody reports it and you go out to the mail server and you say, take out anything with this subject line. Well, if the subject line has changed a little bit every time, or if the contents of it have changed, or file names that are attached, all that kind of stuff, that's happening a lot. And so we're driving from these campaigns that would be, 100 people in a decent sized organization all get the same email, to almost a campaign of one where each individual may get a more customized email as well as something that's different from someone else. Why? Because AI is in the background making these things, translating these things, regionalizing these things, and making them more and more believable, while the attackers are doing the same amount of work they did before, but they're getting way better results and much more out of it than they did before.
Yeah, and so the scale is kind of astounding. When you were talking about the cybercrime numbers of GDP being third behind U.S. and China, it's like, that's unbelievable. So what's the one thing you hope listeners take away from this episode during the Cybersecurity Awareness Month?
I think the one thing that I would say we got to take away from this is, again, the problem is growing. It's there. AI is there. And I really think we need to focus less on the specifics of the AI technology and more on how it's being used to trick people into things. Like, for example, phishing. Yeah, there's AI generated voice calls that are going out to people and they sound like a CEO. But for decades, there's been phone calls that go, hey, I'm sorry, I'm at the airport, really loud in the background, with somebody who sounds somewhat like your CEO. It hasn't changed how that's worked. It's just the technology being applied. So I really think we need to sit back and think about what we are looking for and what we're telling people to look for, and make sure that that aligns with what's going to make sense in a month, in 6 months, a year down the road, that it still applies in some way.
So, Erich, I know that you are with KnowBe4, a valued SHI partner, but it's plug time. Where can people find more of your work? You want to give us a quick shout out to your podcast or anything else happening at KnowBe4 that we should know about?
Yeah, we had a podcast at KnowBe4. We're kind of between podcasts right now, if you will. I do one every so often on Fridays called the Erich Show. That's Jerich with the co-host Javad Malik. He's a good friend of mine. And we try to cover the weekly stories in cyber. It just depends. We're both on the road so much. Sometimes we haven't been able to get to it. But you can also follow me on LinkedIn. I do a lot on LinkedIn. Like to have discussions out there in that area. I'm not so much on Twitter, but LinkedIn's an easy one to find me.
Today, we heard how a $25 million cyber heist played out over a single video call, and why AI, deepfakes, and social engineering are rewriting the rules of trust. Big thanks to Erich Kron from KnowBe4 for helping us break it all down. If there's one thing to take away this Cybersecurity Awareness Month, it's that cybersecurity is no longer just a technical game, it's a human one. To learn more about how to manage risk, check out the links in the show notes. I'm Ed McNamara. This is Innovation Heroes. Until next time, stay alert, stay curious, stay safe. Erich, thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks again to KnowBe4 for sponsoring today's episode. If you want to get ahead of phishing and social engineering attacks, check out their AI-driven human risk management platform at shi.com/partners/KnowBe4.